For 7 years of my life, I had 15 roommates. I lived in Boston. I lived in an old Victorian house. It had 3 floors. It had 8 bedrooms. But there were no bedrooms on the first floor. And we put on about 3 shows a week in our house, which the police were not happy with. But they were more reasonable than you'd think. But at any rate, we put on shows for bands that were traveling the country that were too weird or too on drugs or, just that fit nowhere else. And I did not realize that my best friend Adam, the whole time we lived together, he was compiling this list. He was just taking down every email, every phone number, and he announced to me one day, I was also in a band that he forced me to be in. He announced to me one day that we were going on tour for 3 months. And he's kind of Zappa-esque, so there was no refusing him. And we got in his horrible 96 Jeep Cherokee, which the mechanic told us literally, don't drive it on the highway. And we drove it around America. And the places that we played music were horrible. I mean, it was really bad. And there was one particular special night, we only had been out a couple weeks. We were still in the Southeast, but even though it was Adam's tour and Adam's band, I did a lot of driving, and it wasn't like the other 2 people in the band didn't have driver's licenses. It was one of those things where, like, all of a sudden I turned around and realized I had been driving for 10 hours. It was like, what? How did it happen again? And again, another point is, I don't know if guys have ever traveled with a couple, but it sucks. You're on the floor every time. It's like, oh, there's one bed, and you're like, well, you guys are a couple, and I don't want you to break up on tour, because that would manage somehow to be even worse. So you just, you sleep on the floor every time. And we made it to Savannah, and I was excited to be in Savannah. I love old cities, and the show had been booked by a guy named Troy, which should have been a red flag right away. But we show up at the house, and it's the middle of winter, and I don't know if you guys remember the snow-apocalypse that hit the East Coast a couple years back, but this was during this. And we get to the house, and Troy's not there, and the roommates have no idea that there's supposed to be a show that night, like in the living room. And there's no heat, and they're like burning trash in the fireplace, and it was one of those situations. And I was always of the opinion, I was always trying to make the show not happen. I was always trying to be like, it's okay, we'll just crash here tonight. We're on the road. This is just and Adam he always wants to play music, and we kept waiting for Troy to show up. And Troy showed up eventually with like 10 people at like 11 o'clock, and we put on a show. We play music, which surprises everyone. Like, nobody saw that coming. It's like, and the show was fine, and then immediately after the show, the couple goes to bed. And there's a room with a door involved, which it was like, normally it wouldn't be a big deal, but the closing of that door was such we weren't together, like we weren't, as soon as the door closed, it was like, ugh, alone with the psychopaths, just alone with the garbage burners, like. And it was right around midnight when somebody at the party decided to go out and buy 2 30 racks of Natty Ice. I don't know if you guys know what Natty Ice is. Its actual full name is Natural Ice. But it is neither A, natural, or B, ice. And I wanted so badly to go to sleep. And I don't know if you've ever been at parties where people start drinking at midnight, but a fight ensued, like a fist fight, like a screaming match. And I eventually snuck away into I found someone else's bed, like a futon in the corner, like a very dirty place. And I crept away and like crawled up to sleep. And I was so tired. And then, but there was so much screaming, you know, like, and it's like it was the South, and someone used an epitaph, and then it's just, everything is worse. And I crept out of the room because I couldn't take the screaming, and I went out to think maybe I'm gonna resolve this situation. And I get out there and I realize that I have no tools. I've got nothing. And then I go back into the room and there's somebody in the bed. And I didn't even see how they snuck in, and I don't know who it is. And so there's like a screaming fighting match in the living room, and I decide to try to sleep on the couch next to it. And it's kind of working until the two like Doberman lab mutts decide to lay on me.